welcome to Lilas. We are back this week with another amazing guest because we're trying to hit all the topics that you all have wrote in requesting. And today is going to be a really great conversation. Heather Hester is our guest today. She's a speaker, author, and advocate. She's creator and host of the award-winning More Human, More Kind podcast and author of Parenting with Pride, Unlearn Bias, Embrace Your Child, Empower Their Authenticity. Her work centers around meeting people exactly where they are and guiding them through those moments that feel the most complex. And she brings a steady, calm presence that helps families and communities navigate with a little bit more ease. And we could all use a little more Heather in our life. So, welcome, Heather, to the Lilas podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Tell us kind of your backstory. How did you get started in this work?
My goodness. Yes, absolutely. So the short answer is in my child. The long answer is, I, about 10 years ago, when my kids were approximately 16, 13, 11, and 9, my oldest came out as gay, and we had no idea. And he came out in rather dramatic fashion and then proceeded to really struggle and went through everything from mental health struggles to substance use struggles to dealing with difficult relationships and bullying at school to searching for information in very unsafe places. I mean, you name it, it happened. And it opened up our eyes to so many things so quickly. And, as parents, you're kind of always on that, like, learning the next thing. Like, you finally get something mastered, and then your kid
Yeah,
throws something new at you, and you're like,
naturally,
okay.
right?
It was like that on steroids for like 18 months, right? We were both, my husband and I, are just like, we can't keep up. Like, we would finally be like, okay, I understand. And then he'd be like, well, what do you think about this one? And so once he, we got him to a space where he was well supported, where he was feeling better, where we were feeling like we kind of understood better, where we felt like we were still present for our other kids, which is really hard as well.
Mm,
Um, and this was really insane and difficult and scary and um, just asked so much of each one of us, not just of us as parents, but of our kids. And just thought, there's got to be something better out there for support, for information. And, we struggled so much to find what we needed. There are amazing national resources like PFLAG, like the Trevor Project, with which I lean upon all the time and I recommend all the time because they just consistently have such good not only support for specifically LGBTQ kids, but they also are incredible with their research and their information and their resources for parents and kids. But as far as feeling, we felt so isolated and we felt like it was really hard to find that information and kind of drill down into like, what do we need? And then how do we take those next steps? Like, okay, I understand what it means for my kid to be gay. Um, I I don't necessarily understand the support he needs when he's presenting with this, and this, or is asking these specific questions. I don't know the answer to these questions. Where do I
right.
find the information? So it was those types of things that I was like,
Yeah.
I we need to have this. So I just started creating things. And it was very much, initially just came from a place of like, we've been through it. I know there have to be like thousands and thousands of other parents out there who are coming from all different places, but all in the same boat. Right.
Hmm.
And so it kind of just started from this very organic place of like, here's one place with a bunch of great resources. And by the way, I'm a writer, so I write stuff. So, right. So it was just kind of like, here are my thoughts. on
Yeah.
all the stuff that's been happening in a very real and messy way. And,
Mhm.
people kind of I was surprised that people really liked it. Like, I started hearing from people and I was like, "Oh, this is actually good. Like, this is helpful." So, then I started the podcast because I thought, "Well, this is a good way to reach more people." And as you both know, a podcast is the most amazing thing in the world, but it's also a ton of work.
Mhm. Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to, like, create consistently good content and
Yes.
be consistent and,
Yes.
do all of those things. Like, there's a lot of background work that goes into that.
Right.
And, but I fell in love with doing it, and all along the way, I was, like, learning. Of course, my kids were growing.
Yeah.
I myself was changing in ways that and evolving in ways that I would never have imagined I would,
Mhm.
asking questions about things that I didn't even know existed, 3 years prior, regularly watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, like, all the
Yeah.
things, and, um, and it just even with all of the ups and downs and all of the really difficult, really scary moments, it was also equally as magical. Like, the way our relationships began to shift. And of course, the kids were all getting older too, but as, like, the just kind of like the authenticity that started to come from that, and, some of it was because my husband and I were being way more authentic, right, and
Mhm.
messy,
Mhm.
which allowed them to be that way as
Mhm.
well. Um, but also just being able to be so much more curious about not just them and what was going on in their lives, but, like, the greater world. And of course, this, coincided with the way that our world has moved in the past 10 years in lots of interesting directions. And so it's just been quite spectacular. But there's the long answer of how I got into what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely relate in that our kids are our greatest teachers. And, I'm listening to you, and the first thing that popped in my head, we're from West Virginia where, we grew up with two of our best friends ended up coming out in college. And I would say we knew as their friends, but like it was not known, it was never mentioned or talked about or anything like that. And I feel like I had a pretty unbiased, view of gay and, uh, it is interesting now being a parent. Like, I've always felt like, I've had lots of friends who are gay. I've worked in schools, obviously worked with kids that are, transgender. I've got friends now I have 2 close friends who have 2, transgender children, and, it does make me wonder if it's your child and they come out, if you had to then start to really look to say, "Do I have some bias still going on internally?" Is that something that you went through with that initial coming
Oh
out?
my gosh, 1,000%. Yes. Well, I grew up in Ohio, but I think more than that, I grew up in a very conservative, I say evangelical because it's, like, the easiest way to describe it. My grandfather was
Mhm.
a Church of God minister. Like, it was a very,
Yeah.
a pretty strict
Yeah.
upbringing.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of things that, I married when I married my husband, he was Catholic, and you might have thought that, I mean, that was, like, just insane that I was marrying somebody Catholic. So,
How
like, that
dare
was,
you?
like, the first crazy thing I did. But then, as we started having kids, like, we were pretty intentional about, like, the way that we were kinda moving, like, this doesn't work for us as a family. We are going to, like, so there were a lot of things that we had already kind of just decided we're doing differently.
Yeah.
When Connor came out, I will tell you both that in that first conversation when he told us, my first thought was, "There's no way that my kid's going to hell, and I need to figure out the why that I feel that so strongly." And I was
Mhm.
like, And, as time has gone by, I'm like, "How weird was that?" That was my first thought, right? But I
Yeah,
also realized, like, that was something that was so deeply ingrained in me, right? Like, that
absolutely.
was a bias that I still had in there that popped
Sure.
up, but it popped up in a way that I was like, "Well, that's not true, but I need to figure out why it's not true."
Why?
Like,
Yeah.
and where did it come from that I thought, way deep inside that's just been in
Yeah.
there, like, bumping around, right? And so there were things like that that, would come up, and it's super uncomfortable when you realize, and I say this, that was one of the reasons I used that word specifically, bias, in my book,
Mhm.
because I feel like it's really important to normalize that we all have biases, right? It's not
Mhm.
something that's like a judgment call. It's not saying, well,
Right.
you're so biased. It's we
Right.
all have them. It depending on,
Absolutely.
right? Like so many different factors that go into that. So I think it's really important to like first acknowledge that, but then be able to
Sure.
say, okay, so these are the things that are popping up. These are my biases.
Yeah.
Why are they there? And do I still, like, relate to them in any way? And if not, like,
Mhm.
how do I begin to, like, just process through them and let them
Mm.
go and just become, like, continue to, like, realign yourself with your true value system, right? And how you're
Yeah.
growing and how you're evolving. Yeah, I think that's a
So
really I'm glad you brought that up because that is an important piece, and I also think it's important to share that because I know that so many people come from that type of background who are super
yeah.
worried, and also, there's, like, shame that comes along with that, and I just like, it's a piece of, like, taking out that shame piece.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I can vividly remember my son was maybe 4 years old. We were downtown on King Street. We had run, to a shop or something, and we were walking, and there were 2 men in front of us holding hands. And we got back to the car. We walked all the way down King Street, behind them. I didn't even think about it, honestly, didn't even notice it. And we got back to the car, and my son said on the way home, he says, "Mommy, do boys marry boys?" And in that moment, I had to really check myself. Because while I thought, I went to this liberal arts college and I, like I said, had several friends and colleagues at this point that lots of interaction. And I still had this innate, do I tell my 4-year-old? Do we go there? Do we talk about sex and
Ugh.
things? Like obviously we're gonna have that conversation, but he has always been a little bit ahead in, like, his in terms of his thinking, and I knew what questions were gonna follow, right? And, and so I just remember almost feeling bad, that I even had that, like, response of, like, "I don't wanna answer this" to my 4-year-old, um but then I have like I said, I have 2 close friends who have had, their children come out as transgender, separate friends, we each have one, and, they talk to me we've talked about this, and they say, "I had to grieve, what I thought I wanted for my kid." Like,
Mhm.
they were even, like, kind of admitting that they had those moments, and that's where that's kind of where that question came from of, like, no matter what we think, how accepting we are, how we see the world and how we see other people, there are these deep-rooted biases inside of us that really when you're faced with your child, right, asking these questions or coming out, it's a, you know, you might have these thoughts or really have to like you say kind of go inward and do some work on yourself of like well why did that bother me that he asked that question or why did I have a hard time answering that question. Love is love. I think that's what I said. Yeah, boys marry boys, girls marry girls, love is love. I think it's probably how I ended that, and then boop, on to the next thing. But it's so much more than that, right? It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And so I think that just acknowledging that parents, even if you're okay with your child, let's say that you are, okay, and you, no matter what, you're going to love your kid. It's still okay to have that moment of, "Ugh," and
Right.
then work and acknowledge you need to work through that. Does that make sense? Or did I just,
Oh my gosh, yes, 1,000% it does, and I think that's, we're complex we're complex creatures, right? So I think you're not going to ever be like 100% totally one way. There are always
Yeah.
going to be things that kind of pop up that ask you to be reflective or have some
Mm.
self-awareness or kind of wonder like where did that come from and not like tear yourself to pieces for it, but instead like be have some grace for yourself. And I do want to say that I think that you did hit on something that is really, really important also, which is that grief factor.
Mm.
Um, that is something that really surprised me, and I know that in a lot of ways, it's even more intense for a parent of a transgender child, um, which even though, like, all the letters are smushed together, like,
Yeah.
it's having a child change their identity and having a child
Yeah.
change what you're in your brain, right?
Right.
Change in your
Right.
brain, their sexual orientation are 2 very, very different things. And,
Absolutely.
um,
Great
and
point.
so I think that first there's that, but then also it is super important in order for you to move forward as the parent of this child who needs your love and support to be able to say, "Okay, this is what I had created in my brain. This is what I just either actually created or just kind of assumed would happen," and be able to say, "Okay, that's gone. I need to be sad about that. I need to acknowledge that and be sad about it and let it go." Because your kid's going through the same thing, right? Like, they
Yeah.
have all their stuff that they're like, because none of them choose this, right?
Right.
So
Right.
they're realizing, like, all these things that I was brought up kind of subconsciously to believe
Absolutely. Yeah.
in order for me to actually be my authentic self, I have to let go of all of that too.
Yeah.
So you being able to grieve that and talk about that process of grief allows them to do the same thing.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great acknowledgement. I worked as a clinical psychologist for many years, and recognizing that that child is also going through not just a transformational process, but a grieving process on top of that, I think is just so important, for us to have that acknowledgement and understanding because now they're in that position to reform, rethink, to become.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, you're really forcing a whole lot of things into one time period that's so critical. And so our response to it, is going to be one that takes a lot of mindfulness and reflection because we're going through our own process at that same time. And so then supporting our
Yeah.
kid through that process at that time too is just, especially if they're in the teenage years, that has just got to be such an amazing task.
It is. It definitely is, and I think that's why it's so important that we have conversations like this,
Hmm.
because none of us is gonna do it perfectly or right, and so being able to just have this information readily available, to have this validation of where you are
Hmm.
available, to say, "Okay, I need a redo because oops, I really messed that up." But to have that knowledge that, "Oh, wait, I can go back and I can acknowledge that I really messed that up. I'd like to redo that. I really want to, have that kind of back and forth." Like it offers this opportunity for such growth in how you communicate with your child. Um, it's I just think it's really spectacular.
And
Yeah.
Scary, but
I
spectacular.
I think also too, I'm thinking about my friends who, and I'm glad you made that distinction because someone changing their identity versus, someone, coming out and saying, I love this person or that. It is different, right? Those are two kind of different processes. And I'm thinking about the moms in my sample size of two here that I'm drawing from. But in these cases, their children are also going through mental health issues, which I think you mentioned that your son also went through, and so they're kind of navigating and trying to find the right supports for their children, and then they're kind of out there just sort of floundering, just sort of, like, trying to figure it all out. Was there one place that you found? I know you sort of started this resources for parents, but can you tell us, like, did you ever seek any kind of therapy for yourself or your husband to support you all going through this? Because it's hard. I don't
Mhm.
care what your child's going through. It's hard for any parent to watch their kids struggle with anything. And so I'm just curious if you were like, "No, I need help."
Yes. You know how things happen in your life that you just think later, gosh, that's extraordinary that that happened then because I don't know what I would have done otherwise.
Right.
I had happened to, through a friend and a workshop and found a therapist about 2 years before Connor came out. Now,
Wow.
again, I grew up and I was kind of always taught, so to speak, that you know, therapy was for weak people and, nobody does therapy. That's crazy. You just talk to your friends about it or your mom or, all the things. You both are
Or
very
pray it
aware
away.
of all the things.
Right, right, right,
Yes. Yes.
right.
And so this friend had like kind of brought it to me as like I was really shockingly struggling with boundaries. And she's like, this friend is doing this really cool workshop. I think you would find it interesting. And I went to this workshop and I sat there the whole time thinking, I'm allowed to do this. This is kind of amazing. And I mean, truthfully, and I was way too old to not know this information. And so um, this woman who had the workshop was a therapist, and was like, "I need to talk to you more about this." She has been my therapist for 11 years, and
Wow.
I mean, there are times where I'm like, "I cannot tell you how grateful I am for you," because
Mm.
Yeah.
boy, did she have her work cut out for her. But by the time Connor came out, I had been with her for 2 years, so I had started to
Wow.
do this work that I
Yes.
needed to do. And she was able to be a support in a way that she could suggest things that I would never have kind of come to on my own, as far as like where to find support for Connor and where to find support for our family, where to find support for my other kids who are like, what's going on? Right.
Yeah.
Because, having smaller children, like there was like the whole gamut of information, ways that we were
Sure.
able to share, like, age
Yeah.
appropriately with them.
Yeah.
And so it was just a lot of stuff, but, yes, we fully embraced therapy, and everybody in my family now has their own therapist. Like, I am a huge proponent of therapy. I'm also a huge proponent of the parent doing their own work. It is not your child's job
Yeah.
to teach you, inform you, guide you, help you heal. It is your job. And so I firmly, firmly believe in that. So find your child their own therapist or their own support group or, you know, vice versa. Yeah.
And I don't mean that to sound like you need therapy to help you get over the fact that your child is coming out. I mean it so I just wanted to make that clear. It's solely for like
Yeah.
watching your child go through a mental health issue or struggle like that has impact on us specifically as moms. I feel like we kind of internalize anything our kids go through, right? Somebody calls my
Yeah.
kid a name, I'm going to dislike that kid for the rest of his life, right? Like we just do. We're natural mama bears.
Well, and I think there's certain okay. There are certain things like
Mhm.
that, which
Yeah.
there's no amount of therapy that's going to make you not think that.
Right,
Right,
right.
right, right,
I mean, you are a
right.
mama bear, right? There are just certain things where you're like, "That's where I'm drawing the line," and if
Yeah,
somebody is mean to my kid, then, I am not a fan of yours.
right,
Right.
right.
I
I
just
mean,
I just wanna validate that feeling. But be it wrong or right, I don't know.
right.
I'm cut from the same cloth, so
Fun to say.
I always admire people who are like, "Well, they're children, Heather, and they don't know what they're doing." I'm like, "Yes, and they
Yes,
learn it
and
somewhere, And
Absolutely.
and it's not okay. That doesn't make it okay, right? It's
Right.
kind of the same as, if you have a narcissist or another, kind of personality disordered person
Mm,
in your life, um,
mhm.
just because they have that doesn't make their behavior okay,
Okay.
nor
Right.
does it
Right.
make it that you shouldn't hold them accountable for said behavior,
Mhm.
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Whenever you're talking about this, there are two things that really stand out to me. One, um, I just find it a beautiful situation that your son felt that he could come out to you, especially as a teenager. I think that that says a lot about your all's foundation as a family, your relationship. He must have felt safe at a very special level in order to do that. Cause I know so many kids, again, many that I worked with were like, I can't do this while I'm in my home. I don't know what will happen to me. We just have to wait till we had a survival plan till they got 18 and into college or whatnot. So
right.
huge kudos on creating that home environment where he felt safe within that. But then for you and your husband too, just as partners to navigate this whole situation with your other kids, how did you guys kind of pull through and come up with like a plan to make this, all work for everybody in a healthy way?
Mm, that is a great question. So we, kind of initially, we have always been good partners. So I think that we were very lucky that we're at kind of the base of everything. We're really, really good friends. I also feel particularly he is a very confident, strong man who it does not need to he did not fall into like kind of the typical like my boy has to be a
Right.
boy and I have
Right.
to be
He
in
didn't
charge and like
he didn't have to
those
be
types of
validated by his kid's sexuality, right?
correct.
Almost.
Correct. I mean, there are funny stories that happen along the way that we still laugh about, like things that he said that I will just share one. He like right soon after Connor came out, he was just so perplexed because and he was just like, we had gotten through like the initial part and he's like, I just don't understand it because he has terrible fashion sense. I was like, he's also 16. I mean, like, just like
Right,
funny
right.
things where he genuinely was like, but I don't understand it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that is a myth.
Right, right.
So funny.
It's a
So
stereotype.
just very funny things.
Uh,
We did kind of the deeper answer to that question is as things became more difficult and more challenging in those first, 6, 12, 18 months, and we were dealing with a lot of really scary and difficult subject matter. We actually met at one point with an educational consultant because we had to make some pretty quick decisions for Connor's safety. And this woman, she met with Connor first, and then she met with us, and she sat down and she looks at me and she says, "I just want you to know that your relationship with your son is never going to be the same. He hates you." And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm already crying all the time. Like, it's just like awesome. I was kind of like, this is an interesting way to approach this, but okay, we'll hear you out, right? Like,
we'll
we're
go with
desperate to help this kid.
it.
So we're going to
Mhm.
do this. So then she looks at both of us and she was like, and in situations like this, more often than not, the couples get divorced. And I was like,
Oh,
I
strike
mean,
2.
needless to say, like, we did not work with her for very long. We got what
Yeah.
we needed and we moved on. But I think my husband and I tell that story always because we were kind of like, well, what do you know? Like, we're going to stay married no matter what it costs now, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever it takes, not even cost, but like whatever we need to do, we are going to communicate better. We are going to work harder.
Yeah.
We are going to do what we need to do to make this marriage work and to make sure our all of our kids are okay, not just
Mhm.
Connor, but like
Right.
continually like checking in with the others and, the 2 youngest ones for the longest time we called the littles, and so they kind of collectively got the same amount of no information. It's Connor's
Yeah.
not feeling well. Connor's having a hard time. Connor had to go away because, he wasn't feeling great. Like literally and now as they are older, they're still learning things that happen and they'll be like, I
Uh,
can't believe you didn't tell us that. And I'm like, really? You were 9. You can't believe I didn't tell you.
Right. Right.
right. Here we are.
um, but yes, I mean, it came from, it was just hard and just saying, "Okay, we have to make this work. That's not an option."
hmm
So, yeah.
I think
I
that's beautiful
appreciate you
too.
sharing. Yeah, and just sharing how dark, let's say, that it got for a while because like I said, again, just people that I know, very similar situations. I mean, some really scary stuff when it comes to safety. And I think I know people that needed to hear that they're not alone in that and that you did get through it. And even like that he hates you. Like, that's also something that I've heard friends say that their children have said to them, and they're like, "I'm literally doing everything under the sun to support them, and they hate me," you know? And so, like, how did you work through that, if you don't mind sharing?
No, he actually went to so he did go away for a while. We had to get him it was a safety risk him being here, because of some things that were going on. So he was in California for a couple of months at an intensive mental health facility, and it was substance use, mental health, both pieces there. And then we were able to move him to a therapeutic boarding school in North Carolina after that. And he when he was in California, he we were out there every weekend, which, there's
Wow.
another piece of this that I also feel is really important to talk about, which is we were able to do that,
Yeah,
which
hmm
right?
like we were so lucky
What
that
a
we could
privilege.
because so many people can't.
hmm
And sorry. And
No,
I
so
just think
true.
so I'm very aware of that and very grateful of that always, like, grateful for the fact that we could do that, that we could get him that intensive help that he needed so that the time that he spent in that space of substance use and abuse, of, like, intense mental health, darkness was
Mhm.
shorter. And he was able to learn, tools and strategies and about himself in a way that was safe and healthy and again, faster, right? But in that process, he didn't speak to me for 2.5 months. And that was so, so hard because we'd get on these calls with therapists each week and she'd be like, well, Connor's not coming because he doesn't want to talk to you and he's very angry. And their job was to advocate for Connor, right? Like that's
Mhm.
part of their job. And so it was very difficult to sit through some of those sessions and have them, hold up a mirror and be like, well, what do you think about this? And this is what he's saying. This is what he's processing through right now. How does that feel to hear that? Or do you have any insight on that? And so I think that for us too, that really helped us grow in ways like probably a lot faster than we may have otherwise. Um, and then now, I mean, I will just say one of the reasons I do talk about this so much is because of where we are now, right? And that he and I actually have a second child who has since come out as well. So that they are both and all 4 of my kids and all of us as a family, like, it has changed our relationships and the authenticity of those relationships in a way that had we stayed status quo, we never would have. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So hard. Anybody that is going through that, just know that it's not forever. It's so hard. It's so painful. Cry,
Mm.
do whatever you need to do. There's nothing wrong with you for doing that. It's just you will get to the other side.
Mm. That's so helpful. I know. I'm going to see somebody today. I can't wait to share that little bit because I know people need to hear that, right? And like you said, you had 4 kids, and he was the oldest. And so, did your other kids ever get kind of frustrated? They may not have known while he was away, or that I feel like, and I might, correct me if I'm wrong, but other kids see it as they get all the attention, right? They're getting all of mom and dad's attention, all their resources, and they're just did your kids ever feel that way when
Yeah.
you were in the thick of it?
I think that, my next one did. So my second oldest,
Mhm.
she really caught the brunt of it.
Mhm.
The younger the littles, were young enough and, I don't wanna say easy and, like, they were but it was
Yeah.
easier to, um, give them the attention that they needed and keep them kind of going in the ways that they needed to be, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
Yeah.
than her, where she was, 13, 14, 15. So she
Mm.
was like at that just tough
Yeah.
adolescent,
Mhm.
preteen, teenager ages where, um, she just knew so much more. He had shared a lot with her, like things that he never should have shared with her. So she had all of this information
Yeah.
that she was having a tough time processing. That, and she also just is a very bright and aware human being, and so she just could see things, right? And she had no
Yeah.
problem calling me out on what she was seeing and where she was angry, and, anybody who has had a teen girl just knows that they, in general, have no problem calling you out on things, and so it was just tough timing, but yeah, she definitely was the one that was like, "Hey, what about me, guys?"
Yeah, what about
Mm.
me?
Yeah.
I do wonder too, whenever how would you tell us to navigate this process? Because as a parent, you do want to protect your kids. You have your nuclear family, all the ones living within that house, but then you have your extended family too. And so
Mm.
how do you go about then like having these types of conversations just to make sure your child's protected? My upbringing, despite being from West Virginia, we were 100%. I didn't, if you had my uncle was gay, our whole family embraced the entire culture of it. I think I said beforehand, like I learned how to do my hair and makeup poorly, but from like drag queens and being in New York. And so it was nothing like I mean, I can do it really good for that stuff, for daily stuff, not so much. Um, but it was just a very, like, normal thing, but, different like, my husband's family, not so much. I don't know that, would be embraced, and so I know that my if I hell, I wouldn't even have to tell my family. I'd just be like, "Well, Cameron's boyfriend," and then be like, "Okay," and then we just move on about our day, but I know that that would be a different level of a conversation I would have to have with other potential family members. So how did you make sure that
Yeah.
that was happening, I guess, in a safe and kind of protective way.
Mm. Good
Yeah,
question.
that's such a great and important question. Um, I always think about this in the way of, there are things that you do like we did initially that I was like, "Oh, I really would like a redo on that." And there are other things that I'm like, "Gosh, I kinda knocked that out of the park, and I don't know how I knew to do that." But that is one that we like, right away with Connor, we were like, "Hey, who have you told? Who do you want to know this information? Who don't you want to know this information?" And from the very beginning, it was very much like he guided it.
That's
And,
good.
people that he wanted to tell that he was, like, nervous to tell, we would do it with him, and we kinda had the full gamut. Like, my husband, we were kind of the flip. Like, my husband's family was very much like, "Awesome." Like, actually, Grace, when he had to go to California, we sat down with my husband's parents, and we were like, "This is what's going on. It's, like, really scary, and we just wanted you to know." And my father-in-law was like, "You're not sending him to one of those conversion camps, are you?" And we were like, "Oh my gosh, no." But, like, the fact that he was so worried, and it was so
Yeah.
sweet, and I was like, God love you." Like, that is so sweet.
Mhm.
And, my my parents, my family of origin were very different, and, Connor did not want to tell them. In fact, he did not tell them for about a year and a half. And finally, when he did decide he was ready, we did it on the phone. I was on the phone with him. It was kind of a group project. And, and, they they responded in a way that I thought they probably would, which, you know, we don't agree with your choices, but we love you, right? Mhm. And, my dad told him to make sure he gets that AIDS vaccine. And I was just like, "Oh, okay." But thankfully at that point, Connor was just like grounded enough and knew, right? Like they know their grandparents. They see things that we don't
Right.
even see, right?
Yeah.
And my brother was similarly not great. Um, and my sister-in-law was amazing, right? And so, the people, like, surprise you in their responses too, but, overall, it was a great we kind of just always approached, "Who do you wanna tell? How do you wanna tell them? Whenever you're ready, there's no pressure."
Mhm.
And when it came to, like people do ask this too, like, when it came to our friends, um, we always ran it by him first, "Is it okay if we tell so and so?" Or if not, then we didn't, right? If
Yeah.
and and then it was kind of funny to, like, learn who of his friends had known and
New.
for how
Yeah.
long and just, like, really cute and sweet stories in that way too. So, he did have a couple of people, who from the beginning were super supportive and those are the people that he still, like, stays in touch with now, like, 10
Mhm.
years later that he still
Yeah.
so it's sweet, and super grateful for that.
So now he's a grown adult, right? You said it's
Yeah,
been about 10 years.
he is. Yeah.
So give us for the parents that are just starting this, right? Maybe they just found out or they're working through those really dark, scary times that you all experience. Tell us what it's like on the other side. Tell us how he's doing and just how your relationship has changed and blossomed from the
Yeah.
beginning
Oh
stages.
my gosh, absolutely, yes. Well, it is, we have a very fun relationship. He lives in New York City. He went there to college, so he's been essentially out there since, he was 19. And he loves it, and it's one of those, as you both know with I was people are always like, "Are you afraid that your son is in New York?" I'm like, "No, like, he's so safe there. Are you kidding?" Like, he can walk
Right?
around however he wants there, like, he is embraced
Yeah.
and loved, right? So,
Fun.
it has been such a cool thing, as his mom and all the things to kind of watch him, grow and develop in a space where he feels, like, very where he's found his people. Like, it took a long
Yes.
time for him to find his people, but once he did, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And just over all of this time, I think once he kind of got through that initial part and once I started doing this work, like, he's been so supportive since the very beginning. People always ask, like, "Is he okay with you talking about this?" I'm like, "Well,
Right.
I would not talk about it if you weren't."
Right,
Um
right.
he's been, like, a really integral part of everything that I've done
Mm.
as a, parent advocate and, every piece of that book that I wrote, he was part of. He's been on the
Mhm.
podcast, like, 3 or 4 times. That in and of itself has been entertaining because
Mhm.
you've been able to, like, hear him grow and change. But
Yeah.
he, it went from not telling me anything to telling me everything, and so we talk once a week, and I hear all the things. Sometimes I'm like, "That's way more information than I needed, but okay." Um,
We
just be
are.
safe and, make good choices, all the things. Um, yeah, it's good, and it's just really fun to see him, like, be him. Right? Like, figure
Mhm.
out who he is and who he wants to be in this world and share those discoveries with me as he comes across them. And just for me to, like, be and it's, it takes a lot of it's just continual practice and learning, but to be able to just hold that space for him and just know that, my job as his mom is just to hold space for him at this point, like, it's not even my job to keep him safe anymore, which, you know,
Right.
That's pretty much out of my hands. Like, all I can do is, like, love him and support him, right? So, I think that that's been such a gift. Yeah.
Mhm. Gosh, that's such a beautiful thing
So
to say. You know, I get teary whenever I hear you say it because it is. It's just such an amazing gift to be able to see it on the other side, especially through, dark valleys or hardships or the late nights, the what ifs, all of those things. And then to be at this space where you can just take a deep, nice exhale breath and feel the freedom that comes from being here now, that's
mhm.
great.
Yes, yes, and I will just say too, like, I do notice there are things that will never ever go away, right? Like, all of that becomes, like, woven into the fabric of who you are as a human being, and so now my youngest is a senior in high school, and, I know a lot of things, and so he he thinks he can get away with stuff, and I'm like, "You forget who your brother is, right? Like, you
Yeah.
forget what I have seen and been through." Like,
You have no chance.
and I also am like, and so,
Yeah.
there's, like, pros and cons to this, right? Because I don't freak out about everything anymore, but I also
Right.
am, like, on to you. Um, and, like, don't think you can pull the wool over my eyes, my friend. Like, it's just, they're so dumb and they're 18. I mean,
Yeah.
you
And
just
you're a
appreciate
seasoned
the
pro
laugh.
at this point.
Oh,
So, but it
boy.
is fun because 'cause I'll, like, pull the older kids in to, I'll call Connor and I'll be like, "I need for you to talk to your brother, and can you handle this for me? Because
Right. Right.
'Cause I'm tired.
I'm
I'm
tapping
so
out.
tired."
I'm tapping out. So where does your advocacy work go now? Like, seeing where things are at, knowing you have 2 children, where's your heart lie within advocacy at this point?
I, well, I still feel very strongly in, like, the, kinda coming out 101, right? Like, that just giving voice to that, and I think I still feel like there isn't enough positive visibility and positive, like, those voices and that information, excuse me, is still getting out for a lot of different reasons. Um, but I also, having older kids and having gone through lots of this, there are really specific pieces that I think I'm kind of shifting into and wanting to talk more about. And it is a little bit more about, like, the darker things, right? Like, the things um that I was just really surprised by and didn't know about, and felt like I was kind of clamoring to, like, figure out in real time. And uh, are things that I'd love for parents to kind of just know, or to be able to easily access information on what to do. Um, or just what to look for, right? Like, I
Yeah.
was just talking with a friend um the other day who she does documentary films, and she just was a consultant on a film that was made. This woman made this film about um sexual assault within the theater community specifically,
Mhm.
and even more specifically within same-sex relationships. And it was like, I mean, it's really dialed in, but it's something that is
Yeah.
so real and prevalent that isn't talked about, right? So I was like, this is
Yeah.
such an important thing to amplify, to have
Yes.
conversations about in a way that, not everything is a five-alarm fire that you should, like, run around and be afraid of, because that's just wasting
Right.
your energy. Like, just have these kind of conversations where we say, like, here are things to look out for. Here are things
Yes.
to
Mhm.
be aware of. And should you find yourself in a situation where your child is asking these questions, or your child is of this age and you know that they're curious, but they're
Mhm.
not going to ever ask you about this
Yeah.
because you're their mom and you're the last person they want to learn about this stuff from,
Mhm.
Right.
here's where you go, right? Like,
Yeah.
here's where you can find helpful information, right? I For my daughter, when she came out, it was a very different experience, not surprisingly, but one of the things I did, because still I don't know anything about lesbian relationships any more than I knew
Yeah.
about gay relationships, and how to answer questions about sex, or just being in a relationship with, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, there's got to be books, right?
Right.
And I just like started buying these books and I'd like bring her a book and I'd be like, here, because I don't know what to tell you, but this book is really interesting. I read it. And she'd be like, you read this, mom? I'm like, well, I wanted to make sure it was actually
Gotta
good
learn.
information.
Yeah.
Right.
I checked it out with my lesbian friends and they said it was. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're so weird.
That's awesome.
But I think too, when you can be like, not so like, oh, this is so uncomfortable, because of course it's uncomfortable. But like if you
Sure.
can kind of approach it in a way of like, listen, like this is real. Like this is life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you really I love your approach and or just the way you're saying, like, I may not know, but I'm gonna learn, right? And that's the biggest thing is that we don't always have to have all the answers, not immediately, and that it's okay to be like, you know what, I don't have the answer, but I will do some research and get back to you, or I'll
Yes.
let's
Right.
research this together, as awkward as that could be. But I think it's also like it's more than just like sexuality or insert anything that your child does that you didn't plan for or see or expect, whatever expectations we put on our kids, right? I mean, even like I'm going to use a very generic example, but like wanting them to like sports. How many of us parents are like, oh, especially dads, oh, I want them to be into sports. They're just not into sports, right? They're gamers or they want to hunt and fish. They're not into watching football. And we have all these expectations, right? that we layer on our kids and
Yeah.
then it's like we get our feelings hurt if it doesn't come to fruition. And I think,
Right.
we could all learn from that and that anytime we put those expectations on anybody, you're setting yourself up for these feelings when really like our job as their parent is just to give them love, shelter, food, some social skills and and then it's up to them to become who they are in this
Right.
world. And I'm saying this to myself as a reminder not to put those expectations on our kids constantly, especially when they're little and or teenagers when they don't know who they are. They're just figuring it out. Hell, I'm 43, I'm still figuring it out. Uh,
Right. Oh my gosh, yes. Well, and I think too, like we do that because in a lot of cases that was how we grew up, right? Like,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
so there are things that we just do without even like thinking about it. We don't do it with like an ulterior motive or a bad
No.
motive. It's just, well, this is how we learned how to parent. And so I
Yeah.
think kind of to your point, like, well, we have the opportunity to make different choices and to
Yeah.
parent differently and to say, well, this actually feels better approaching parenting or a parent, parenting this specific child in this way. And I think it's just and one of those things where we just need to take the pressure off of ourselves
Yeah.
to be, perfect, whatever that perfection
Whatever it
in
looks
your
like.
brain means.
Yeah.
It's not real. Like nobody
It's
can attain whatever that is. So I think, one of the things that I will just say one more thing about this because I've thought about this a lot recently for some reason about how the way that I grew up, and I think a lot of people, I'm a little bit older than you, um, was that the parents kind of approached us as clumps of clay to be molded, right?
yes.
And the way that they
Yes.
wanted to mold us.
Mhm.
And so if we didn't like automatically go in the way that they wanted us to go, they would like force it, right? Like you
Mhm.
have to do this. And this is just I'm
Right.
doing this because it's the best thing for you. And I just think that it is like that's not a judgment statement. It's just that's how it was then. And
Mhm.
and I think one of the, lovely things about, parenting over the past, 15, 20 years is that there's been a lot more, it's kind of opened up into, well, how can we really approach parenting in a way that's, better for the child, right? And to be able to actually see this child for who they're showing up in the world. So they aren't they're kind of given to us for like this short period of time. And at minimum, we need to keep them alive, right? And then at maximum, maybe we can like help them really figure out who they are
Yeah.
and help them, learn more about that while we have them in our
True.
lives, right? In this like
Mhm.
container of, 18 years, because then they're gone, right?
Yeah.
And the relationship that we have after that point is really based on how good it was before.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Like, the authenticity, I should say, of that
Yes.
relationship is based on
Yeah.
that. Like, do you want to be in a relationship because your child wants to be in a relationship with you? Or do you wanna have a
Yeah.
relationship because they feel guilted into it or because they feel like they
Mm,
have to, right? So I think there's a big difference there too. That's probably a conversation for another
great
time,
point.
but
Yeah.
Oh, that's for
Heather,
sure.
we're so grateful that you shared with us today and just I mean, I know people that needed to hear this conversation, so I know there's many more people out there that need to hear this. I needed to hear this quite honestly just because it's such a great reminder. I love that idea of not shaping our kids into something that we think that they should be. And that's something that I constantly have to remind myself, do I want certain things for my kids? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you're right. That's truly not our role. We are just here to guide them and to be good people, kind people, loving people. Um, but that's it. We don't need to make them anything else. I mean, if we do that, we've been successful at our job.
right? 1,000%. And we're gonna mess up doing that along the way and be okay with that, right? Like, there's, like
Yeah.
because all these things are just teaching our kids how to like, people make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes.
Mhm.
You own
Mhm.
it, you apologize, you move forward.
Mhm.
Yep.
This was
Love
Wow.
it.
awesome.
Thank you
I'm
so, so
so
much. Where
happy.
can people find you and your
Oh,
resources?
so sweet. The easiest way and everything is kind of under the umbrella of heatherhester.net. So you can find my book, my podcast, all the things I do. Um, it is growing there. So come be a part of it. I love it. Yeah.
Yes. I can't
Mhm.
wait. We will definitely share that. You can also find that on we will link that to our webpage and our social media. Of course, you can always find us at the Lilas Podcast and lilaspodcast.com. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank
Until
you.
next week, y'all, Lilas.
Thank you.